Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Adam Wallace, and today, as you can see by the title of the video, this is going to be how to start the engines in the 737 NGX. Now there's a couple things that came to my head whilst I was making this video. Is one, if you're unable to start the engines, there's probably a lot of other things that you don't know how to do in this aircraft, properly. So I've came up with this sort of idea for a series that I could go through, basically, the different procedures within the preparation to starting this aircraft up properly, whether that's the electrical power up, the cockpit preparation, just stuff like that. Let me know in the comments if you guys think that'll be a good idea, especially if you're trying to learn how to fly this aircraft. So here we are in a cold and dark state. I'm not going to do any normal setup. I'm just going to do the bare minimum to get the engines started. So as we can see, aircraft cold and dark. I'm going to set the parking brake, and I'm just going to flick the batteries on. And I'm going to put, actually, because we've got a fuel tank when we came in, so I'm just going to put the center pumps on to power the APU. So get that started up just now. Now one thing that is very important is, and it's actually a common reason why the engines will not start for you guys, hence the reason you're actually watching this video, and it's because you've not set the air conditioning and pressurization, not the pressurization, sorry, the air conditioning panel properly. So I'm going to go through that more in detail once the APU starts up, the auxiliary power unit. You actually need some sort of aircraft power in order to start the engines. Unfortunately, ground power does not provide bleed air, so we can't actually set the igniters off to start the engine. There's not really much else you really need to know about that field of things, so I'm just going to wait for the exhaust gas temperature to stabilise at about 400 degrees. Then I'll pop the buses on. As you can see, got a bit of aircraft power now, and the first thing I'm going to do is make sure the centre pumps are on. Now you've got to pay attention to this, guys. This is to avoid something called a fuel imbalance, which is just basically how it sounds. I mean, it's when there's more fuel on one side than the other. I think the maximum is 400, and don't quote me on this, but I think it's 463 or 465 kilograms is an imbalance from which you're not allowed to land or depart, in which you would need to do the fuel transfer procedure. So basically you would just need to turn the fuel pumps off on the affected side. However, that's not why you're here, so I'm sidetracking a little bit. So now that we've got more than a ton inside, we've actually got 12 tons in the center tank, we are going to start the APU, or we are running the APU on the center tanks. If you've got less than a ton in the center tanks, that's when you'd use the forward on the left side, and that would power the APU. The APU can run without the fuel pumps because it suction feeds, however it is just much easier if you put the pumps on. Okay, so from now we've got the APU powered up, we're going to go to the air conditioning panel, and this is probably why that your aircraft, why the engines aren't starting. So you're going to put the recirculation fans off, packs off, isolation valve, you can leave that to open, and put all the bleeds on. You could turn the engine bleeds off, it would still start. However, there is no requirement to turn the bleeds off unless an abnormal checklist says so. So you just keep them on and you keep the APU bleed on. At this point, in the Europe and in most places, you start the right engine first. One thing that you're probably doing wrong is when you start the right engine, well obviously you can't start the engine, but a lot of people, when they're not too familiar, they'll flick the igniters. You don't need to do that. If the right igniter is on, you can still turn engine number 1 on, even though the ignition isn't on the left igniter. I mean, it's absolutely fine. So from now, the aircraft is configured properly. We're just going to put the fuel pumps on. That should be on. The position strobe and steady should be on steady as soon as the aircraft's got power. I'm going to stick the anti-collision on as well. Like I said, I'm not going to do any of the overhead panel or any of the cockpit preparation. So this is all wrong for now. This is purely just how to start the engines. So we can now put that in the right igniter, which it should be on the ground. I'm going to flick it to the ground position. We're now going to go over to the engine displays, and we can see that the N2 starts to increase. Now that's going to rapidly increase, and once you can verify that there is rapid N2 rotation and slight N1 rotation, we'll open the engine start levers. When that gets to 25, we can see that. That's the fueling, and we can see the exhaust gas temperature will then increase. And that's all you need to do to start the engines, guys. I'm going to repeat the process just to clarify it. But that's really it. I mean, it's not such a complicated procedure. You've just got to make sure that air conditioning panel is set correctly. So recirc's off, pack's off, ISO valve open, and all your bleeds on. Make sure your APU generators are on, and make sure your APU is running. You can't actually start the engine without the APU unless you have got an air starter. So you can see that you heard that click. That basically means the engine is stabilised and the igniter now flicks to the off position. We don't need to flick the igniter. Flick engine number 1 to the ground position, and we can see N2 starts to rapidly increase, which is typical. It's what you want to see, and you want to see that there is visible N1 rotation. It can be small like it is just now. When that gets to 25% N2, we can just put the fuel in. Exhaust gas temperature rises. And that's another successful engine start. When it gets to 56% N2, that'll be the engine stabilised, and the engine mode selectors will then flick to off. Then at that point we can put the generators on and then I'll show you what to do with the pressurization panel just after that. As we can see, engine number 1 is stabilised. We're going to put the generators on. We can now automatically, the APU gen will disengage. You can put recircs on, packs, auto, and put the APU bleed off. It's recommended that you do a 1 minute cooldown for the APU, but we're not going to do that. Just going to switch it off. And that's really everything, guys. So we can see we've got the engine started. That's the takeoff config, you don't need to worry about that. But the engine's nice and started. And that's it. That's the video completed, guys. If you guys have got any questions or you need me to clarify on something, put a comment in the video and I'll get to it as quick as I can. But in the meantime, guys, hope you all enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did, and I'll see you guys later.